The diner didn't just get quiet when they walked in. It emptied of sound, like the air itself had been pulled out of the room. Not the awkward hush after a dropped plate. Not the annoyed silence of an argument gone too far. This was the kind of silence that makes your shoulders tense before your mind even understands why. 6 men stepped inside. Black leather vests. Heavy boots thudding against the worn linoleum. Chain wallets clinking softly with every stride. You didn't need introductions. You didn't need names. The patches on their backs said everything. Hell's Angels. Northern Arizona chapter. These were men who didn't shout, didn't posture, didn't rush. They didn't have to. The room responded to them automatically. A waitress froze mid-pour, coffee spilling dangerously close to the rim of the mug. A trucker at the counter stared into his cup like it suddenly held the secrets of the universe. A family with 2 small kids whispered urgently, asking for their check before their food even arrived. No one made eye contact. No one stood up unless they absolutely had to. Every instinct said the same thing: don't be noticed. And then, from a booth near the window, a calm voice cut through the tension like a blade through fabric. "Hello, sir. My daughter has a tattoo just like yours." Every head in the diner turned. Not toward the bikers. Toward the woman who had just spoken. She was small. Maybe 70 years old. Silver hair pulled neatly back. Hands folded on the table as if she were waiting for tea, not staring down a room full of men everyone else was afraid to breathe around. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't looking away. She was looking directly at the man in front. The leader. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Gray beard. Eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and remembered all of it. His name was Cal Mercer, though no one in that diner knew that yet. He stopped walking. So did the men behind him. For a moment, the only so. ND left in the room was the low hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Cal's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something heavier. Something cautious. He took one slow step toward her booth, leather creaking, boots scraping softly. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough, worn by years of smoke and road dust. "What did you just say?" The woman didn't flinch. She didn't rush her words. She repeated herself slowly, carefully, as if she wanted to be certain every syllable landed exactly where it needed to. "My daughter," she said, "she has a tattoo just like the one on your vest." Cal's hand lifted to his chest. His fingers brushed the patch sawn into the leather. A skull with wings. Faded. Worn. Unmistakable. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "What's your daughter's name?" The diner remained frozen, every breath held. The woman answered without hesitation. "Mary Ann," she said. "Mary Ann Hayes." Something inside Cal Mercer cracked wide open. That name. That name hadn't been spoken inside the club in over 12 years. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what happens next in this diner is going to make you question everything you think you know about loyalty, fear, and the people society tells you to be afraid of. Now let me ask you something. When you see a group of bikers walk into a room, what's your first instinct? Be honest. Do you look away? Assume the worst? Grip your wallet a little tighter? Keep your head down and hope they don't notice you? Most people look away when fear walks into a room. They drop their eyes, hold their breath, pretend they see nothing. That's exactly what everyone in that diner was doing. Everyone except one woman. Eleanor Hayes. 72 years old. Ready. Red nurse. Widow. Mother. And somehow, the only person in that room who wasn't afraid. She sat there calmly, hands steady, eyes locked forward, while the air around her tightened. The men standing across from her weren't just bikers passing through town. They were enforcers, guardians of a code most people never even know exists. The kind of men who don't bluff. The kind who don't forget. And when Eleanor casually mentioned a tattoo, everything changed. Because that tattoo wasn't decoration. It wasn't rebellion. It was a mark. A promise. A blood oath. One that hadn't been invoked in more than a decade. So why did her daughter have it? And why did Cal Mercer, a man who'd stared down death more times than he could count, suddenly look like he'd just seen a ghost? To understand that moment, you have to go back 12 years. Las Vegas. Summer. Heat so thick it pressed into your lungs and refused to let go. 20 miles outside the city limits, where the neon glow disappears and the desert takes over, Cal Mercer was riding with two of his brothers. Just 3 bikes cutting through empty highway. No rush. No trouble. Just asphalt, engine noise, and miles of nothing ahead. Until everything went wrong. A black SUV exploded into view without warning. No headlights. No hesitation. Just speed and intent. It slammed into the back bike like a missile, sending the rider tumbling across the road at 70 miles an hour. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. Flesh met pavement. Cal and the other rider barely had time to react. They hit the brakes. Tried to swerve. Too late. The SUV boxed them in, hurting them off the road and into the dirt. Tires lost traction. Rocks tore into metal. Cal's bike went down hard. His shoulder dislocated the instant he hit. Ribs cracked. Blood filled his mouth. Dust burned his eyes. And through the ringing in his ears, he saw them. 4 men stepping out of the SUV. Armed. Calm. Professional. Not cops. Not rivals. Something worse. They weren't there to rob anyone. They were there to deliver a message, and that message was violence. Cal's brothers didn't run. Tommy Vega barely had time to lift his hands before 2 shots tore into his chest. He dropped where he stood. The younger rider, Kyle Brennan, grabbed a tire iron and swung with everything he had. The blow cracked one attacker's skull, but Kyle paid for it. He went down hard. Broken ribs. A collapsed lung. Internal bleeding. Cal was the last one standing. Barely. He threw punches that felt slow and heavy. Took hits that blurred his vision. Felt his legs weaken beneath him. Every breath burned. Every second stretched thinner than the last. And just when he knew it was over, just when the desert road was about to become his grave, another car pulled up. An old sedan. Rust-scarred. Dented. Completely out of place. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She wasn't armed. She wasn't big. She wasn't a fighter. But she didn't run. She shouted. Her voice cut through the chaos, loud enough to make the attackers hesitate, loud enough to force them to turn. 5 seconds. That's all it bought Cal. 5 seconds to crawl. 5 seconds to grab Kyle's tire iron. 5 seconds to swing one last time with everything he had left. The blow was enough. Enough to break their momentum. Enough to make them retreat. The men scattered, dove back into the SUV, and tore down the highway, leaving behind dust, blood, and a silence that felt unreal. The woman rushed forward. Cal tried to stand. His body refused. She was already kneeling beside him, hands steady, movements precise. Checking his pulse. His breathing. His wounds. "I'm a nurse," she said calmly. "Stay with me." Her name was Marion Hayes. 28 years old. On her way home from a double shift at a Las Vegas hospital. She had no reason to stop. No obligation to get involved. But she did. And that choice, made on a forgotten stretch of desert highway, would echo for more than a decade. She had no reason to get involved. No obligation. No connection. No safety net. But she did anyway. She lifted Cal's broken body into her car with shaking hands, every instinct screaming that this was a bad idea. She didn't take him to a hospital, too many questions, too many eyes. Instead, she drove him somewhere quiet. A friend's place. A house tucked far enough away that no one came looking unless they already knew it existed. She worked through the night. Stitched his wounds as carefully as she could. Got fluids into him. Watched his breathing, counted his pulses, kept him alive 1 minute at a time. She barely slept. Every sound outside made her heart jump. And when the men who attacked him came searching, when they knocked on doors and asked questions, she lied straight to their faces. Said she hadn't seen anything. Said she didn't know anyone hurt. She stood there calm, knowing full well what could happen if they didn't believe her. She hid him for 3 days. 3 days of risk. 3 days of silence. 3 days of choosing someone else's life over her own safety. She never asked for money. Never asked for protection. Never even asked his name. She just did what she believed was right. And when Cal's brothers finally came for him, she didn't linger. She didn't wait for thanks. She didn't leave a number. She stepped back into her life as if none of it had ever happened. But Cal didn't forget. None of them did. When he healed, when the club pulled itself back together, they tried to find her. They searched old addresses. Made calls that went nowhere. Asked questions carefully. All they ever came up with was a first name, and the memory of what she'd done. So Cal made a decision. He went to the club's tattoo artist and asked for something familiar, but not perfect. A skull with wings. Their mark. Their symbol. But with one deliberate flaw in the design. A small imperfection that only the brothers would recognize. He had it inked directly over his chest. Not as decoration. As a reminder. As a promise. A promise that if Marianne Hayes ever needed them, they would come. No questions. No hesitation. No matter the cost. He told her story to every new member who joined. Made it part of the chapter's history. The woman who stopped when no one else would. The woman who saved a brother and asked for nothing in return. Some of the younger guys thought it was just a legend, something the old-timers told to dress up the code. But the veterans knew better. They knew Cal Mercer didn't make promises lightly. And they knew that tattoo on his chest wasn't art. It was a vow. Years passed. The club grew. Brothers came and went. The story stayed alive inside the chapter, but nowhere else. Outside of them, no one knew. Marianne never told a soul. Not her mother. Not her friends. She kept living quietly. Working her shifts. Staying out of trouble. She moved to a small town outside Flagstaff, took a job at a local clinic, bought a modest house, and lived simply. A few years later, after her husband passed, her mother Eleanor moved in with her. The two women became each other's entire world. Quiet evenings. Familiar routines. Safe. Or so they believed. Until one night, 12 years later. Marianne's car broke down on a dark stretch of highway outside Flagstaff. She called her mother, kept her voice steady, said she was fine. Told her not to worry. But Eleanor heard something underneath the words. Something wrong. So she got in her car and started driving. Partway there, she pulled into a diner, just to breathe, just to think, just to steady herself. And that's when 6 Hell's Angels walked through the door. Now, back to that moment. Cal Mercer stood over Eleanor Hayes, staring down at this elderly woman who had just spoken a name he hadn't heard in more than a decade. His heart slammed against his ribs. His thoughts collided all at once. He turned to his. They exchanged quick looks among themselves. No words. None were needed. The message passed silently between them like An electric current. One of the men, Richie, reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and immediately started dialing. His expression was tight, focused. Another rider, younger than the rest, Jake, pushed through the diner door and stepped outside, scanning the parking lot, his eyes moving fast, alert. The others stayed close, forming a quiet wall around Cal, watching Eleanor closely, waiting for what would come next. Eleanor didn't move. She remained seated, hands folded neatly in front of her, back straight, eyes calm on the surface. But inside, everything was chaos. Her heart slammed against her ribs, loud enough she was sure someone could hear it. She had no idea what she had just set in motion. No idea what power carried the name she had spoken aloud. Cal finally broke the silence. "Where is she?" he asked. His voice was different now, lower, quieter. Almost gentle. That was when Eleanor's composure cracked. Just a little. "My car broke down," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. "About 15 miles north of here. She called me an hour ago. I was on my way to get her, but I needed to stop. I needed to breathe. I needed a moment to think." Cal nodded slowly. He knew that kind of fear. The kind that settles heavy in your chest, making every thought feel tangled. The kind that makes your hands shake even when you're trying your hardest to stay calm. He lowered himself into the booth across from her, moving carefully, like he didn't want to scare her. "Ma'am," he said softly, "your daughter saved my life. And if she's out there alone, we're going to make sure she's safe." Eleanor blinked, confusion washing over her face. "I don't understand," she said. "She never told me anything like that." Kel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "That tattoo she has," he said, "it's not just ink. It's a mark. A promise. It means she's under our protection. Always. No matter what." Eleanor's eyes widened. "She never told me," she spurred. "I've seen the tattoo. I asked her about it once. She just said it was a reminder of something important. She wouldn't explain." Kel nodded slowly. "She wouldn't," he said. "She's the kind of person who does the right thing and then walks away. Doesn't ask for credit. Doesn't want recognition. She just keeps moving." He straightened, his expression hardening. "But we don't forget. And we don't leave debts unpaid." Kel stood and turned to the others. "We ride. Now." Richie snapped his phone shut and slid it back into his pocket. "The club knows," he said. "They're standing by if we need backup." Cal gave a single nod. "Good. Let's move." The diner remained frozen in silence as they headed for the door. But the fear in the room had changed. It wasn't aimed at the bikers anymore. Now it was aimed at whatever was waiting out there in the dark. Because anyone who threatened someone under the protection of the Hells Angels wasn't just starting trouble. They were choosing a war. Eleanor stood up. "I'm coming with you." Kel opened his mouth to protest, but she cut him off instantly. "That's my daughter out there," she said. "I don't care how dangerous this is. I'm coming." Kel studied her for a moment. He saw it then, the steel in her eyes. The same steel her daughter must have had 12 years ago on that lonely desert road. The same quiet courage that makes someone risk everything for a stranger. He nodded. "All right," he said. "You ride with me. And you hold on tight." 5 minutes later, they were on the highway. 6 motorcycles tore through the night, engines roaring, headlights slicing through the darkness like blades. Eleanor clung to Cal's waist, her arms locked tight, her heart racing. She had never been on a bike before. Never imagined she would be. The wind lashed against her face. The engine thundered beneath her. And somewhere ahead, in the cold stretch of road beyond the headlights, her daughter was waiting. Every instinct told her she should be terrified. The night was dark, the road was empty, and everything about the situation screamed danger. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time in hours, a quiet, fragile sense of hope settled in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, her daughter was going to be okay. The motorcycles moved with disciplined precision, engines humming in steady unison. They rode close, tight, controlled, like parts of a single machine rather than individuals on separate bikes. These weren't just riders out for a late-night cruise. This was a unit. A brotherhood that operated with intention and purpose. Jake rode point, his posture alert, eyes constantly scanning the stretch of road ahead for anything out of place. Richie held the rear, checking mirrors, guarding against whatever might be coming up behind them. The others flanked Cal on both sides, forming a moving shield around Eleanor as they pushed forward through the night. But they weren't alone on that highway. About 2 miles back, barely visible in the darkness, a black pickup truck followed silently. No headlights. No sudden movements. Just a shape in the shadows, carrying bad intentions. Behind the wheel was a man named Derek Pitts. His hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He was drunk. He was angry. And he was looking for someone to blame. Earlier that night, he'd been thrown out of a bar after getting aggressive with a woman who had turned him down. Her name was Marion Hayes. She hadn't been rude. She hadn't mocked him. She'd been calm, direct, and clear. No. But Derek had never learned how to accept that word. He'd grown up in a place where men like him believed they were owed whatever they wanted. Where rejection wasn't an answer, it was an insult. A challenge. Something to punish. He followed Marion into the parking lot, his voice rising as she walked away. He shouted after her. Threw insults. Made threats. Told her she'd regret ignoring him. Marion didn't respond. She didn't argue. She didn't even look back. She got into her car and drove away before the situation could turn even worse. But Derek wasn't finished. He climbed into his truck and followed her, keeping just enough distance so she wouldn't notice. Watching. Waiting. Looking for the right moment. And then her car began to fail. The engine sputtered without warning. A sharp cough. Then another. The dashboard lights flickered like dying stars. Marion's grip tightened on the steering wheel as the reality sank in. Something was wrong. She guided the car toward the shoulder just as the engine gave out completely. Silence. No engine. No movement. Just an empty stretch of highway disappearing into darkness in both directions. She tried to restart the car. Nothing. She reached for her phone. One bar of signal, barely holding on. Her fingers trembled as she dialed her mother. The call connected, but the sound was distorted, breaking in and out. "Mom," she said quickly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My car broke down. I'm on Highway 89, about 15 miles north of town. I'm okay, but I need help." The line crackled. Eleanor's voice came through in fragments, strained but urgent. "Stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'm coming." And then the signal dropped. Marion sat in the dark, phone in her lap, heart pounding in her ears. She locked the doors, rolled the windows up, and stared straight ahead, trying to convince herself that everything would be fine. That help would come. Then headlights appeared behind her. A truck pulled up alongside her car. The engine idled. A door opened. Derek stepped out. He slammed his fist against her window. "You think you can just walk away from me?" he shouted. "You think you're too good for me?" Marion didn't respond. She didn't unlock the door. She didn't even turn her head. Her hand stayed locked on the steering wheel as fear flooded her chest. Derek's voice grew louder. Sharper. More unhinged. "I'm talking to you. Open the door." He pounded on the glass again. Tried the hand. Lou. Kicked the side of the car, the impact echoing in the night. Marion's heart raced. She grabbed her phone again, no signal. No way to call for help. She was alone. Trapped. And Derek wasn't backing down. Then, faintly at first, she heard something else. A low rumble. Engines. Motorcycles. The sound grew louder, closer, cutting through the silence of the highway. Derek heard it too. He stepped back from the car. She was still squinting into the darkness when it happened. Out of nowhere, 6 motorcycles thundered around the bend. Headlights sliced through the night, engines howling as they closed the distance in seconds. The bikes rolled in fast and precise, boxing Marianne's car in from every angle. Then, just as suddenly, the engines cut. Silence crashed back down over the highway, heavy and tense. Kel swung off his bike and immediately helped Eleanor down. She didn't hesitate for a second. She rushed to her daughter's car, yanked the door open, and pulled Marianne into her arms. "You're okay," she whispered, over and over. "You're okay. I'm here. You're safe now." Marianne was trembling uncontrollably, her body racked with sobs. She clung to her mother like she might fall apart if she let go. "Mom. I was so scared," she cried. "I didn't know what to do." "I know, baby. I know," Eleanor murmured, holding her tighter. "But it's over. You're safe." But Cal wasn't watching them. His eyes were locked on Derek. Derek stood a few feet away, swaying slightly, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't have. The sharp stink of alcohol clung to him, thick and unmistakable. His eyes were red, unfocused. His movements were sloppy. Yet there was still tension in his shoulders, still a trace of hostility in the way he stood his ground. Cal nodded toward the pickup truck. "That your car?" Derek didn't answer. He just stared at the 6 men surrounding him, leather vests catching the glow of the headlights. "I asked you a question," Kel said. His voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that made the air feel dangerous. Derek swallowed. His voice cracked. "Yeah, so what?" Kel stepped forward, just one step, but it was enough. "So you leave. Now." Derek scoffed weakly, trying to sound brave, trying to convince himself he wasn't completely outmatched. "Or what?" Kel didn't raise his voice. He didn't blink. "Or you find out what happens when you threaten someone under our protection." Derek's eyes flicked past Kel, taking in the others, 6 steady figures, unreadable expressions, patches stitched onto their vests. Whatever courage the alcohol had given him drained away in an instant. His shoulders slumped. He backed toward his truck, stumbling slightly. "She's not worth it anyway," he muttered. "Just some stuck-up woman who thinks she's better than everyone." Cal's jaw tightened. "Get in your truck," he said coldly, "and drive away. Before I change my mind about letting you walk." Derek didn't argue. He climbed into the cab, started the engine, and pulled off without another word. His taillights faded into the darkness until the road was empty again and the highway fell silent. Marianne was still shaking. Still crying. Eleanor held her close, smoothing her hair, whispering soft reassurances as the adrenaline slowly drained away. Kel approached them slowly. He removed his vest and pulled his shirt aside, revealing the tattoo on his chest, a skull with wings. The same design Marianne carried on her shoulder. "I never forgot what you did for me," he said quietly. "Not for a single day." Marianne looked up, confusion giving way to realization. Her breath caught as recognition settled in. "You," she whispered. "You're the man I pulled off the highway in Vegas. 12 years ago." Cal nodded. "You saved my life," he said. "And tonight, we returned the favor." She stared at him as memories rushed back, the blood, the dust, the fear, the split-second decision to stop when everyone else had kept driving. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said softly. "I didn't even know your name." "Kel Mercer," he replied. "And this is my family." He gestured behind him to the men standing quietly nearby. "Richie. Jake. Danny. Leon." Frankie. Every one of them knows what you did. Every one of them would ride 1,000 miles to make sure you're safe. Marianne's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. No fear. No panic. Just relief. Gratitude washed over her, deep, overwhelming, so strong she couldn't even find the right words for it. Before she could say anything else, Kel reached into his pocket and pulled something out. It was a small metal coin. Old. Scuffed. Heavy for its size. One side carried the club's insignia, worn smooth from years of use. On the other, a single word was stamped into the steel. Brother. Kel held it out to her. This is yours, he said quietly. If you ever need us again, you call. Doesn't matter when. Doesn't matter where. We'll come. That's a promise. Marianne closed her fingers around the coin. She felt its weight pressing into her palm, not just metal, but meaning. Commitment. A bond forged in the dark. Thank you, she said, her voice barely steady. Thank you, so much. Cal gave a slow nod. No, he replied. Thank you. You didn't have to stop that night. You didn't have to put yourself in danger for people you didn't even know. But you did. And that's something we don't forget. Richie stepped in next. We'll get your car towed. And we'll make sure you and your mom get home safe, Jake added, his tone firm. And if that guy shows his face again, Jake continued, he's going to regret it. Marianne managed a small, tired smile. I think he already got the message. Cal adjusted his vest. All right. Let's move. We'll ride with you back into town. Make sure nobody else gets any ideas. The bikers didn't waste time. Richie made a quick call to a tow truck driver who owed the club a favor. Less than 20 minutes later, Marianne's car was lifted onto a flatbed, chains clank. In the quiet night air. Eleanor and Marianne climbed into Eleanor's sedan. Engines roared to life. 6 motorcycles fell into formation. Slow. Steady. Watchful. As they moved through the dark, Eleanor glanced into her rearview mirror. Headlights filled the glass, rows of them, belonging to the very men society had taught her to fear. And yet, those men were the reason her daughter was safe. She thought about all the times she'd crossed the street to avoid bikers. All the assumptions she'd made. All the fear she'd carried without ever questioning it. Shame settled in her chest, because the truth was riding right behind her. These men weren't monsters. They were protectors. Loyal. Honorable. They had shown up without hesitation, without reward, without being asked. And in that moment, Eleanor understood something she'd never considered before: family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about debt. About memory. About promises kept in the dark. When they finally pulled up outside Eleanor's house, curtains shifted along the street. Neighbors watched from behind glass. Whispers began instantly. Mrs. Henderson across the road clutched her pearls. Mr. Dalton next door reached for his phone, already halfway to dialing. Eleanor didn't care. She stepped out of the car, walked straight up to Cal, and met his eyes. I misjudged you, she said. All of you. And I'm sorry. Cal smiled, just a little. Most people do. We're used to it. Well, you shouldn't be, Eleanor replied firmly. What you did tonight, what you did for my daughter, that matters. That's real. And I won't forget it. Cal extended his hand. Eleanor took it. Her grip was steady. Respectful. Then Marianne stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around Cal and held on for a moment longer than necessary. If you ever need anything, she said softly. Anything at all, you call me. Cal nodded. Same goes for you. Your family now. He paused. And we take care of family. Moments later, they were gone. 6 motorcycle. ES fading into the night. engines dissolving into silence, leaving behind nothing but the echo of their presence. And a story that would never be forgotten. Some moments don't make sense until years later. Some choices feel small when you make them, until they come back to save your life. And sometimes, the people you're taught to fear are the very ones who remember your kindness when it matters most. That night would be talked about in that small town for years to come. Inside the quiet house, Eleanor moved slowly, setting the kettle on the stove. The familiar sound of water heating filled the kitchen, grounding after everything that had happened. She poured the tea carefully, hand still slightly unsteady. Marianne sat at the kitchen table, silent, her fingers wrapped tightly around the old coin Cal had given her. She turned it over again and again, tracing the worn engraving with her thumb, as if making sure it was real. After a long pause, Eleanor finally spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked gently. Marianne looked up, surprised by the question. "Because it never felt important," she said. "I just did what anyone should have done. Someone needed help, so I helped them. I never imagined it would matter 12 years later." Eleanor set the cups down and sat across from her. "But it did," she said softly. "It mattered tonight. It probably saved your life." Marianne nodded, the weight of it settling in. "I guess kindness reaches farther than we think." Eleanor leaned forward. "I think it's more than that. You didn't see them as a threat. You didn't see criminals. You saw people. Men who needed help. And they never forgot how you treated them." Marianne smiled faintly. "Maybe that's all any of us really want," she said. "To be seen." By morning, the story had spread through town like wildfire. People whispered about the convoy of motorcycles that escorted Eleanor Hayes and her daughter home. Some shook their heads, calling it reckless. Others said she was foolish to trust people like that. But then came the memories. Someone recalled the time the club fixed a flat tire for a stranded family on the highway. Another talked about groceries quietly paid for a struggling veteran. Others mentioned charity rides, fundraisers, help given without cameras or credit. And slowly, the tone began to change. Maybe, some people admitted, they weren't what everyone assumed. Maybe fear had painted a picture that wasn't entirely true. Maybe the world wasn't as simple as good and bad, safe and dangerous. Maybe people were more than patches on leather vests or mistakes in their past. Maybe everyone deserved to be seen for who they really were. A week later, Marianne received a package. There was no return address. Inside, she found a framed photograph. 6 motorcycles stretched across an open road, silhouetted against a burning sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold, the moment frozen in motion. On the back, written carefully by hand, were 6 words. "Family isn't blood. It's chosen. Always." Marianne hung the photo on her wall, right beside a picture of her mother. And every time she looked at it, she remembered that night, the fear, the rescue, the gratitude. She remembered the lesson she'd learned 12 years ago, and the reminder she'd just received. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop when everyone else keeps driving. That sometimes the people who look the most dangerous are the ones who will stand between you and harm. And that kindness, real kindness, never disappears. It echoes. It multiplies. And it finds its way back to you when you least expect it and need it the most. What's your take on this story? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every single one. If this resonated with you, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more powerful stories like this, check out the other videos on the channel. Because sometimes, the people you're told to fear are the ones who stand between you and the darkness. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness echoes louder than 1,000 engines.